So yesterday we spoke about this idea of b'chol levavachem and b'chol nafshechem, this idea of individuals versus everybody else, and the idea of a sort of general idea that everybody is able to give up everything, all their resources. B'chol mo'idechem is not applicable. It really isn't, which is why it doesn't appear over here. And now the next part of the Shema is going to talk about something that's very basic. What it's going to say over is something absolutely fantastic, and it's also something which is pretty scary as well. It says, "V'natati matar tzechem bi'itoi," and HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to give us the rains that we need when we need them. Yored al malkosh, the first rains, the last rains. V'asafta deganecha v'tiroshcha v'yitzorecha. You're going to gather in the crops, right? So what are you bringing in? You're bringing in your grain, and you're bringing in your grapes, and you're bringing in your oil. V'natati esev besodcha livhemtech, and there'll be plenty of food there'll be fodder for the animals. V'achalta v'savarta, you're going to eat and you're going to be satisfied. So far so good. What are we learning over here? Something which is really something which is very, very basic. What are we learning?
We eat the animals.
If you eat the animals, then you don't need to worry about how much fodder there is. But
follow the mitzvahs.
Which means like this, right? It's very clear that God is saying like this, that if we do what we're supposed to do, right, then nature will work in tandem together with us. Everything will be great. Which means if we do what we're supposed to do, the rain will come, the crops will grow, there'll be plenty of everything, right? And then,
we talk about that.
Sorry? This week's Parsha, right? That's exactly the klolos, which is that if we do what we're supposed to do, everything is going to be great. But what is fascinating over here is the idea that if we do what we're supposed to do, there won't be miracles taking place. It won't be some kind of a miraculous sense of bounty that's going to be, but rather it's going to be perfectly normal. It'll be perfectly natural, right? If we want nature to work the way that it's supposed to work, we just need to do what we're supposed to do. Yeah, it's interesting in last week's Parsha, in Parshas Bahar. So it says over there, it says that if you ask what's going to be, it's talking about Shemitah, right? It says, if you ask what's going to be for the next year, then I'll give you a bracha, God says. Right? So people are prepared to keep Shemitah, but they want God to guarantee that it's going to be okay. God says, I'll give you a bracha. So the Mefarshim, the commentaries ask a very simple question. What happens if you don't ask? Does that mean you won't get a bracha?
We don't need a bracha.
So the pshat, that's exactly what the pshat is, right? That a person whose level of belief is so high that they don't have to ask God. God says that this is what you need to do. That's what they're going to do without questioning. That they won't need a blessing because everything will run the way that it's supposed to run. The blessing kicks in. Again, it's not. Don't misunderstand me. It's not a negative reflection on the person. The person is not sure. How am I going to get through this? How am I going to manage? And get through 3 years because you need for the 6th year and you need for the 7th year and you can only start planting in the 8th year, which is you need 3 years worth of crop to be able to keep you going over here. And if somebody says to God, okay, how's this going to work? God says, I'll give you a bracha, which is the idea of God overtly showing his, revealing his presence here in the physical world is something which we don't need that. If we do what we're supposed to do, we don't need that. We can live inside of God's natural, in inverted commas, inside of his natural blessings, and everything is going to be fine. And it says at the end, "V'achalta v'savata," which may be a phrase that you're familiar with because we say that in benching as well. When we recite Birkat Hamazon, we say "V'achalta v'savata." What does it mean to say that? What does v'savata mean? To be satiated, right? The question over here is how are you going to become satiated? So there's a disagreement amongst the sages. There's a disagreement about what does that mean. Does it mean that there's going to be so much that you'll be able to eat huge amounts and you'll be full? Or does it mean that the food itself will be imbued, the food itself will have a tremendous sense of satiation within it and you won't need to eat very much in order to be able to feel full? I don't know what the answer is, right? But Lamaisa, the idea of satiation. It's interesting, satiation, to be sovea. Right? I think everybody's definition of what satiated is different, right? So one person, for example, I have a son. I'm embarrassed to tell you this. I really am because from my family, this is obviously not coming from my family. But I have a son who, when he's had enough to eat, he stops eating.
How does he do that?
Believe me, I don't have a clue. I'm embarrassed to tell you this. I really am. But he might even have food left on his plate.
Why?
You know, that's actually a diet these days. Is that you just only eat when you're actually hungry. When you're eating and you're not don't feel that feeling of hunger at all anymore, you stop.
Yeah,
as opposed to being full.
The emes is, it makes perfect sense, right?
But it's not
it really
bad.
does.
It's not bad what you say.
No, quite the opposite. I wish I had that gene. What can I tell you? I wish it was hereditary. I wish I could get it from my son. But the
reverse hereditary,
right? But what most of us, what do? We just eat. It's there. You eat it. It's like Edmund Hillary. It was there and I was there, right? So he climbed Everest. So by the Jews, it's like it was there and I was there, so I ate it. That's what we do, right? It's nothing deeper than that. To be surveyor, to be satiated, is really a state of mind. Now, I heard an interesting thing from somebody. He told me that he'd a from guy years and years ago. He'd gone to an African country to do business, and whilst he was there was a coup. Right? The army decided to take over, and they closed down the airport, and there was a curfew, and no foreigners were allowed out of their hotels. They had to stay where they were. And he said, everyone was okay except for him. He was the only from Jew there, and so he had a bowl of fruit. He could eat a little bit of fruit, but after a while, food supply started dwindling because there wasn't anything to eat, and he said that it was getting pretty hairy after a while.
Kind of fast.
And but he said after 4 days they lifted the curfew, and there was still going to be a day until they opened up the airport, and he said that he'd had some contact with the Jewish community, the very small Jewish community where he was, and he went and knocked on the door of somebody who was living over there. And that person said, they'll give you what they wanted to give him to eat something. He hadn't eaten for the last few days. He really hadn't eaten very much at all. And so they asked him, "What do you want? Do you want this? Do you want that? Do you want the other?" And he's like, "Yes, yes." Yeah, doesn't matter what order you bring it in, everything. And he said he got about halfway through an omelette, and he was done. He was finished. Yeah. He could not eat. His stomach had shrunk, and he couldn't eat anything more than that. I mean, don't worry, Baruch Hashem, after a few days he managed to, he worked on this to get his stomach back to maximum capacity. But
you feel that way after Yom Kippur and by Tisha B'Av.
When you fasted a long time and then
and it's not that,
So the concept of sever is something which is very psychological. It really is. Some people are able to be satiated by a small amount of something simple, and other people need a lot of something, not so simple in order to feel good.
Is it just food, or is this like sleep or other things too?
Over here it's talking about specifically about food. V'achalta v'savata, that you'll eat and you'll be satisfied. Right? But the emes is it's true about almost everything else we do as well, right? That one person is satisfied with a lot less than what somebody else is satisfied with. But then it says like this. Then things start going a little bit. Yeah.
It gets dark.
Hishamru lachem. Just be careful. Pen yiftel levavchem v'satem v'avadtem elohim acherim. In case you decide to start worshipping other gods, v'ishtachavisem lehem, and you bow down to them. Because what? What's going to happen? V'chora of Hashem b'chem. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to get angry with you. That's interesting that this phrase, v'chara af, charoin af, that's the highest form of anger that God exposes down here in this physical world, and it's always attached to idol worship. So it says, right, be careful, because what's going to happen? What's the problem? Something really fascinating over here, which if you stop and build on it, you'll see that it makes perfect sense. What we're learning over here is like this. When things are too good, that's when it becomes easy for people to start wanting to worship idols. Isn't that? It's an interesting paradox.
Isn't that what happened after Shlomo Melech's reign?
Yeah, for sure.
His wives went into idol worship.
And life was great then. I mean, really great. Which means that, like, what's the pshat's very simple. Idol worship comes in all different kinds of shapes and forms. But maybe today's idol worship is like a form of assimilation, right? When it's good for the Jews, when it's too good for the Jews, then it becomes a problem. It's the most incredible paradox, because we imagine that if we just had everything that we need and everything was laid on for us, we'd be able to spend our entire day involved in spiritual pursuits and growing closer to God, right? And it's not true, because the more we've got, then the less we imagine that we need God, and it becomes something which is terrible in the end.
Why? Why do you think that?
Maybe it's an inyan of dependency, not wanting to feel dependent. I don't know if you've ever been exposed to businessmen, especially successful businessmen, but more often than not, when they close a successful deal and they make a lot of money, it's like everything is I was great, I did this and I did that, and I right. And when they lose, it's like, why did God do that to me?
Right.
It's an interesting thing. It really is. I don't know what it is. It's this inability that we have to recognize that everything is coming from God, especially the blessings are coming from God.
So you're saying when things it's like when things are really good, it's almost like you're too good to believe in something you can't see.
Maybe, and maybe that's a trap. Why do you turn to idol worship? Because the one thing that idol worship has over Judaism is that you can see what you're worshiping. Sounds ridiculous, right? I mean, you worship this tree or you worship this rock or whatever it is. It sounds completely ridiculous.
I deserve instant gratification.
Yeah.
Kind of idea.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was just trying to understand that fully.
We live in a world of instant gratification, which is incomparable to any other generation that's ever existed. Really, it's I remember when credit cards first came out, and my grandfather could not grasp the concept. How can you buy something if you don't have the money to pay for it? I mean, the emphasis, if you stop and think about it right now, it is rather odd, isn't it?
Credit. You want credit for what you have.
Because I want it now, even though I don't have the money for it right now, but I want it right now. It's an interesting, I don't know, it's like
instant credit.
We've all been brought up in it. Our generation, we've been brought up with these things just exist. It's just accepted that you've got a credit card and you can buy things even if you don't have the wherewithal to pay for it right now. You can buy it anyway. But and it's getting more and more extreme, right? So again, I hate to date myself, but back in the Neanderthal age, right, when I was growing up, so even if you had a credit card, you had to phone up the company and give your credit card details, and they would send it to you, and it would take a couple of weeks until these things arrived. And nowadays everything is same day delivery, because who's got time to wait?
You don't have a credit card, they'll just give you one.
Yeah, that's also true actually.
Capital One, you don't have to have any credit.
Yeah. Whatever. I mean, maybe that's our avodah zarah now. Our idol worship is this constant sense of instant gratification, and I think that instant gratification brings with it all kinds of problems, social problems as well, actually. So, for example, divorce rates are very, very high because people want to be instantly gratified, and if it's not going, if it's hard, it's not going well, and you've got to work on it. So, the simplest thing is just to bring it to an end and move on to the next one. The rates, for divorce is over 50% in the United States, but when a person gets married for a second time, it's even higher, and a third time even higher than that, which means that it's like,
cycle is getting stronger. Almost.
Yeah, it's hard, hard to work on these things. I remember my wife's grandmother told us that when her and her friends were getting married, they came from a more Hasidic background, so the whole concept of going out didn't exist. But she said there was not one couple that were suited to each other, that was compatible. She said you just worked on it. She said no one got divorced. You just worked on it, and they built marriages. Some of them had more successful marriages, some of them were less successful marriages. But you worked hard in order to turn it into something which is going to be viable, because that's what you did. That's what you were supposed to do. So it's like instant. Even people are not capable of having interpersonal relationships, not very successful ones anymore, because nobody knows how to talk to anybody anymore. Everybody's busy texting and messaging, and even the way that you text, nobody spells things out anymore. So everything is becoming more and more concentrated in little bursts of contact, and then they're gone.
When I get in the worst of my, like, in my personal life, in situations that I really don't want to be in, one thing I've learned just from being here is to realize when I'm not acknowledging that everything truly does come from Hashem. Whether you're talking like personal relationships or credit cards or the instant gratification of anything you're pursuing, it just seems to always come back to that. And even the bad things, even that when things happen that I don't understand why I'm experiencing, that's maybe when I tune in most to the idea that everything.
It's hard. It's hard work. It's hard work. But you see, I tell you what's interesting is that what you're really defining over here is that it's a lot easier to tap into that when things aren't going well than when they are.
Yeah.
We expect things to run smoothly. We just expect them to go well. So when they do, we imagine that's just the way it's supposed to be. When they don't, so then we turn towards God to try to find out why is this happening. And really what we're being taught over here is the other way around, that we need to, the whole time that things are going well, we need to be focused on God and acknowledging God and thanking God for what He's giving us. And that way we can avoid the nasty bits. That's really what the Shema is teaching us over here, right? That otherwise, what's going to be? HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to get angry with you, and what's going to be? There'll be no rain. So you say to yourself, big deal. So we'll manage without rain. No, that the land won't give its produce, right? Which means like this, that even today. How many times have you heard me say this? It's something I believe this passionately. I really do. In the olden days, we were a very agricultural society. So it was clear that everything ran according to agriculture. Economies ran according to agriculture. Today, we imagine that we're not an agricultural society anymore. And, economies run according to stock markets, and economies run according to other things. But the bottom line is, if you have a drought in the Midwest, right? So the grain crop, the wheat crop is much smaller than it normally is. The ripple-on effect is enormous, because what happens, you see almost immediately, is that the price of flour goes up, so the price of staples go up, and then people stop buying luxury cars. Right? Even though we have no connection to, we don't have any connection to the fields anymore. We go to we think bread is grown in plastic bags, that on the shelf in the supermarket. We think chickens, right, are created, frozen, and shrink wrapped, right, in the freezer the freezer section of the supermarket. That's what we think, right? It doesn't occur to anybody that the chicken might have been something that was running around. Well, maybe not running around, because that's, if it's free range, right? Running around with feathers and wings and who knows what, and saying
in the parking lot behind the supermarket.
Whatever, yeah, and shouting out cock-a-doodle-doo from time to time. We don't have any connection. Maybe I don't know. I hate to sound like a Luddite. I really do, but we don't have any connection to our. To where anything's coming from anymore.
Do you really hate to sound like a Luddite, or do you like sounding like a
No, the truth of the matter is, I like, I love it. And when I say I hate to sound like a Luddite, that's what I get the most enjoyment, because it means I'm about to say something which is, in your ears, is going to be completely ridiculous. But it's, when I was growing up, my parents, during the school holidays, they would be they took us off to farms to see how things happen. Just get an idea. Where does milk? Milk doesn't come in bottles. Apparently, it comes in a cow, and then you got to squeeze all kinds of things to get it to come out. I'm not 100% sure whose idea it was exactly to say, "Oh, let's squeeze this and drink it," but nevertheless, that's where
smartest man alive.
I don't know.
amazing.
Maybe the sickest man alive. I don't know. Here, let's squeeze these things, and let's drink that. Huh? Just in general, I think that the composition of food is something which is absolutely fascinating. I really do. Like, who imagined that if you peel this, then you can eat it, and it's like all of these things are really fascinating. They really are. Different kinds of foodstuffs. Different fruits. Just go to fruits. Who decided that if you peel a pineapple, then you can eat the inside? I would have thought the first person probably tried to eat the outside and decided that maybe it wasn't such a, maybe this is not such a tasty thing to be doing. I don't know what made them think that they can keep persevering and get to the inside instead.
They threw it out, and then some other guy who's
he picked it up.
He's like,
this
really
is good. Yeah. My kiwi. You know what kiwis are?
Mm-hmm.
Kiwi fruit, right?
disgusting.
And so my mother said when kiwis first came out in England, which is whatever, 30 years ago, I don't know exactly, maybe a little bit longer, 35 years ago, she said that she was at a do once, and they had these kiwis were out on the fruit platters, and nobody really knew what they were, and she saw a lady pick it up and start eating it with the skin on, not getting very far, right? So at what point did somebody say, hey, let's take this off, and then we can eat it? I don't know. It's interesting. I think
wonder
food
if
is.
that's an example of being satiated, like realizing what you have, and
I don't know. You know what? It's interesting. Chazal, the sages say, part of the problem with the manna was that it didn't have a visually appealing form to it. It didn't really have a visual form at all. It was just something opaque that just appeared, right? And Chazal say that the Jewish people, when they came and they complained to Moshe about the manna, so it's interesting, we see that God doesn't get angry straight away about their complaint, because God recognizes that there is a certain justification to the complaint, which means that if something looks good, we all know that, right? If something looks good, you get far more enjoyment from eating it than something which tastes exactly the same, but doesn't look as good.
It's true.
You could take food that gets served up over here. It could be that one day they serve it up one way, one day they serve it up another way, and the one day it looks better than it does the other day. And it's more popular and it tastes better, and people feel more satiated by what they're eating because they're getting visual enjoyment as well. I think it's all attached. It really is. It's all a part of everything. Rav Chatzkel Sana said that, like an orange, for example. Oranges are full of minerals and vitamins and things that we need them. Our body needs them, right? And we would have to eat oranges even if they didn't taste good and look good, right? And Rav Chatzkel Sana used to say that the chesed from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the kindness of God, is that these things look appealing. It looks great, so we'll eat it, and we'll get enjoyment from looking at it, we'll get enjoyment from eating it, and our bodies will benefit from it as well. That's why we say in benching, v'chein, v'chesed, v'rachamim. The chein, which is normally translated as grace, but chein is like some sort of unquantifiable dimension that sort of makes something appealing.
Aesthetic?
Maybe, but it's not really aesthetics, because chein is applicable to people as well. You can click with somebody, even if the person may not be aesthetically a very nice-looking person, but you just connect in an inner way. You connect to that person. That's chein, and the chein of the oranges and the chein here, the chein of the apple. That's what I remember, because you've got your little apple over there, right?
What's the blessing for it, by the way?
It's Bori Priya Eitz because it grows on a tree. But part of the enjoyment of eating apples is here. You see this beautiful green apple. It looks great. Tastes good as well. Kodesh Baruch Hu knows what he's doing, right?
You're bringing on the evil eye right now.
That's okay. You can handle it, right?
Yeah, I guess.
So what'll happen if HaKadosh Baruch Hu takes away the rain? So then we end up with no crops, and then va'avadatem mehera me'al ha'aretz hatovah she'Hashem lo yisein lochem. And we'll be sent out of the land. This time we're talking about the land of Israel. We're going to be sent out of the land of Israel. So just one last idea before we finish for today. It says, "Va'avadatem mehera me'al ha'aretz hatovah," that we'll be sent out of this good land. The simple translation is that we'll be sent out of this good land. But there's an underlying theme that the land was too good. There was too much goodness, and that's what sent us off to worship, right, idols, and that's what made us end up being exiled from the land, because the land was too good. So it's interesting that the commentaries explain that when one of the places that the Jewish people went to was a place during the exodus from Egypt until they get to the land of Israel, there were 42 stops on the way. One of them was a place called Di Zahav. Di Zahav means Dai Zahav, where God turns around when Moshe turns around to God, and when God complains about the fact that they built the golden calf, he says, what do you want from them? You gave them all that gold. It was your fault. Right? Dai Zahav. Dai means enough, and Zahav means gold. Okay, he's saying he's giving a little critique to God. Right? What do you want? You gave them all that gold. What did you expect them to do with it? Right? Thank you. Good. Okay, we're going to stop over here. I don't think I can beat that. If somebody says that's interesting, that's like...